Lord, we bless your holy name. Father, I thank you for this day, for the people gathered in your name, Lord. Pray that we would put our hearts and our minds in the right place, in the right priority, Lord, putting you on the forefront of our minds. I pray your blessing upon this time. Pray that you would be open to receive whatever you will bring, and that we would always be willing to change and to move accordingly to your move within us, and always be eagerly seeking you. Lord, I pray these things in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Is it 1432? How about, Jaden, if you want to read the first part, I'll try to tackle the second part.
Sounds good. Wei Xing Mao said to Confucius, "Chu, what are you trying to accomplish with all this fitting around from perch to perch? Are you not merely showing off your glibness?" Confucius replied, "I would not presume to be glib. It is just that I am very stubborn."
Nothing is known of Wei Xing Mao, but he addresses Confucius by his personal name, Chu, which indicates that he is either very much Confucius' elder or is deliberately trying to be rude, or possibly both. This is the first of the several encounters between Confucius and primitivist or Daoist-like recluses recorded in the Analects. Wei Xing Mao, who has presumably withdrawn from public life in disgust, mocks Confucius' travels from state to state in search of an official position as frivolous, flitting from perch to perch, and implies that Confucius' motive is personal vanity. Confucius' reply is quite modest and restrained, considering the shocking nature of the accusation. Bao Xian understands zhi as a verb, to consider to be a fault, and gu in the sense of crudeness, explaining that the point of the master's reply is that Confucius was troubled by the crudeness of his age and wished to put the way into practice in order to transform it. Reference Mencius 3b9, where Mencius similarly defends his debating of rivals as a distasteful necessity if the world is to be saved from disorder. An alternate interpretation of Confucius' reply is provided by Zhu Shi, who takes gu as rigid or stubborn, as in the translation, but follows Bao Xian in reading ji as a verb. Understood this way, the reply is a criticism of Wei Xing Mao. I am troubled by your rigidity. In other words, at least I do not sit rigidly at home like yourself and do nothing. This fits with Confucius' criticisms of the overly fastidious elsewhere. But as Chen Tianxiang notes, such tit-for-tat bickering would be out of character for the master, even though Mao is taking advantage of the reverence accorded to an elder in order to speak impudently to him. Confucius would still hold to the etiquette of treating an elder as an elder, and would therefore answer him sincerely, explaining that his itinerant lifestyle is motivated by a concern for the world. The sense in all of these cases, however, is much the same. Confucius is determined to do his best to fulfill his mission as the bell clapper of heaven, calling his fallen contemporaries back to the way, despite his moments of weakness when he feels like throwing in the towel and going off into exile, despite his occasional doubts that heaven has abandoned him and that his work is doomed to failure, and despite repeated failures and the mockery of his contemporaries.
glibness is a negative quality that is attacked throughout the text. The original Zhao meaning of Ning was something like attractive or noble in speech, but in giving it the negative sense of glibness, Confucius portrays Ning as the false external counterfeit of true inner goodness. This is no doubt the sentiment behind such passages. The good person is sparing of speech, and in 1327, reticence is close to goodness, as well as Confucius' general suspicion of language as an outward show. So kind of accusing him of trying to make a name for himself.
I'm not quite sure, because the way that it's worded here is kind of odd. But is it essentially saying with the gu and the g part that Wei Xing Mao accused Confucius of glibness? And the reason why he said, I would not presume to be glib, it is just that I am very stubborn. It's like a similar wording. It's like a play on words almost, where it's the same words but with different pronunciation to mean something different. That's kind of what it seems to be.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that makes sense. So it's kind of a cheeky way of also showing him that that is very much not the way that he is. Yeah, I'd heard. It's funny because I was talking with my friend last night about Confucius's names actually, and he explained to me that I think Confucius has like 3 names because there's the one referenced here, the Chi. His original like birth name was Kong Chi, and then Confucius is the one that we know him as. But then he had another. It was like Zhang something, I think, and it basically just meant like Father Confucius. It was like Zhang Ji or something like that. I'm not sure. But anyways, my friend was explaining to me that often in Chinese society, when you would reach a certain age, you would get something like a courtesy name. And it would basically be like a new title in which people would address you. And so that Confucius, Kong Chi, that's where he basically got his second name from. Literally like having him be like father or master. And so I don't know, first of all, I really like that in Chinese culture, at least back then, that was very common. I think now it's seen as very uppity if you have a courtesy name or courtesy name. But not only back then do I think that's a really cool concept, but I also find it extremely impressive, the composure he's able to hold himself to, because even though presumably Wei Xing Mao is his elder, it's essentially like kind of infantilizing Confucius in a way by calling him by his younger name. Because he's not even calling him by his new name or by his title Confucius. He's referring to him as the name that Confucius had as a young boy, or at least a younger man. I think it's around when you're 20, 30, where he got his new name. And so it is, even if he is his elder, it is definitely something that is, even calling him by that name, very much used to try and cut him down. And so the fact that Confucius replies with, quite honestly, a great sense of poise and togetherness is, I think, a great way of entirely disproving this person's point in the first place, because I don't think a glib person would have such a restrained reaction. Yeah, Zhongni. That's right.
Maybe this is a less important aspect of this analytic, but I appreciate how Confucius is able to approach what is, at least by the commentator, being presented as a pretty weighty accusation, which I imagine, I simply imagine, I don't know for sure, that his disciples were present, and so to be disparaged that way in front of your disciples can be like you can just picture that being pretty difficult.
Mm-hmm.
But Confucius' ability to remain lighthearted about it, because there's still a sense of humor, at least in the way it's translated here, somewhat different from how others have translated it. But being able to lessen the weight of the accusation by not being defensive about it. It's this aspect of it that is most impactful to me, or stands out the most.
Well, that's why I was even asking about the wordplay part, because the fact that that is like a very lighthearted way to deal with such a thing is like, I think the fact that it was kind of like a play on words was very telling of his heart in responding to that.
He's like, this is basically what it's saying, so I'm not rewording it too much, but he dismisses the accused vice of glibness, but says, well, you could say I'm kind of stubborn, so he like accepts there being another vice that he has, but it's not really a vice, and he knows that, and he knows that's what he's communicating too, because what he's stubborn in is
a noble thing.
Yeah, it's his insistence and persistence in the way, and it's not like a out of the blue statement either, because he's saying, Wei Xing Mao saying, why do you keep going from place to place? Because it doesn't seem to be. This is actually what other recluses and primitivists would accuse him of. You're just like barking or chirping. Nothing you're saying or doing is actually changing, at least in the way that your teaching seems to imply, as far as the change it should bring about. None of that is happening. You have a following, but no ruler is accepting you. No ruler wants you. And besides that being an insult, it is also, you can see there are many instances, I wish I knew them off the top of my head, that Confucius kind of took those to heart. Actually, we're given them. 5, 7. Yeah, 5, 7, 14. If the way is not put into practice, I will set off upon the sea in a small raft. He said 9:14. Yeah. Obviously, it was, despite the lighthearted response to the idea, it was still something that I think really struck pretty deep and comes up in different places. 9:14. Let's see how that one was. Like being abandoned by heaven.
It's interesting. Just listen to one of the things from Daniel.
Oh yeah.
Daniel. And he was talking about the saints who even through all their hard work, nothing ever comes of them, and no one ever knows them. And no one cares about them, but God knows them, you know.
Mm-hmm.
He sees their work, and and they're always having to struggle, and they're always having to go through all this pain and being a prophet or being used by God. They have to go through all this crazy stuff and they never see anything come to fruition. Or yeah, that's.
I mean, besides many wise men or sages of the past having themselves written nothing, which Confucius is among them, much of their impact is very much a posthumous
Yeah.
posthumous
Yeah.
thing. It doesn't. They actually. It's a really tragic thing if you think about it. If you get to know the character enough to understand that something that they devoted their entire lives to, they never actually got to see the fruit of. At least to the extent that they were hoping. At least, obviously, Confucius had disciples.
Yeah.
Another in 527 it says, "I should just give up." That's Confucius talking. "I have yet to meet someone who is able to perceive his own faults and then take himself to task inwardly." 1438 is another one, just right next to where we're at. Oh yeah, this is one of those instances where I don't know if it's a primitivist or not saying this, but a gatekeeper asked his disciple Zulu, "Where have you come from?" And he answers, "From the house of Confucius." Isn't he the one that knows what he does is impossible and yet persists anyway? So that's the stubbornness again.
Impossible.
I really like the last one of the references there, which is, again, only like 2 Analects away from where we're at. So we'll read it again later. 1435 says, "The master sighed, 'Alas, no one understands me.' Zagong replied, 'How can you say that no one understands you, master? I am not bitter toward heaven, nor do I blame others. I study what is below in order to comprehend what is above. If there is anyone who could understand me, perhaps it is heaven.'" It's interesting.
Maybe if you studied more of what was above, you'd understand what was below.
Reminds me of Jesus' frustration with the disciples.
Mm-hmm.
I was trying to look for that word next to stubborn, jigu, wherever you say it, jigu, but I couldn't find it in the appendix.
Oh, I think that's because jigu can literally be stubborn or it can be glibness,
Yeah,
just depending on your pronunciation.
I was curious about what he meant there too, being stubborn. I want to think that it's like being almost like adhering to a standard in a way.
Yeah, like we were saying, people are seeing it as just like foolishly persistent in this, in what he's doing, going from state to state, trying to see if anyone will begin to practice the way. That's the stubbornness that he's accepting.
If you look in this text, though, it says that ji is the verb, and then gu is rigid or stubborn. So it's literally just the verb form of rigid and stubborn.
Interesting. Yeah.
Whereas the ji gu that Wei Xing Mao called him, it was ji as the verb and gu in the sense of crudeness.
guess we could move on to the next one. Andy, you want to read the first part, and then Isaac can read the next.
1433. The master said, "One does not praise a thoroughbred horse for its physical strength, but rather for its character."
Normally virtue here has more archaic sense of general inner character. As Zheng Shuang comments, de here is the sense of balanced excellence. The character of the horse seems to be a metaphor for the inner virtue of the gentlemanly minister. Can you say this part? Actually,
Jiang Qi.
Yang Qi explains, although the gentleman may have a variety of skills, he should be valued solely for his virtue.
Oh, I think you assigned this one, actually. No, with one of your classes. I think I remember the first thing that came to mind when I read that was that conversation you had shared that you had with Emmanuel. You remember I actually texted you about that because I thought it was kind of cool. It was like when you were really getting into piano and such, and he asked like,
Oh, that's the intellect you're talking about is when he says the gentleman is not a vessel.
oh right, that. But
I was actually just reminded of that reading.
Yeah. But I actually think it kind of applies here as
Yeah.
well. Although he may have a variety of skills, he should easily. You would tell the story better than I, but I always really liked when you said that because it stuck out to me.
Mm.
I know you assigned 1434, but I think you assigned. I got notes.
What is thoroughbred? To understand that better.
It's like the top echelon of the horse.
Is it because it's not like mixed breeds?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
The bloodlines are pure. And
that makes
So you can imagine it's like the description of the horses we read in Ben-Hur and Jerome.
that's the best.
Where he has like their lineage.
Yep.
Mm.
The Jewish horses.
The Jew love horses.
Yeah, that's a better way of putting it.
Yeah, most thoroughbreds are Arabian horse lines.
That makes sense considering that was what it was in Ben-Hur.
I got to work with a couple of those horses. There was a farm that used to have them up on the top of Lost Mountain.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, years ago, like 20 years ago. And got to work with them, or I was cleaning stalls and stuff, but
Well,
it was pretty cool to see them. These white, beautiful white, they're called Rippazarms. They were these beautiful white horses, and they just looked regal. They just looked amazing. Their bodies were really muscular and super tall. They were really tall. It was interesting.
But you didn't praise them for their physical strength or appearance.
no, I did.
But did you know their character?
You know the whole. I'm confused what it means when it compares de rather than like the way we normally use it. Like the difference between general inner character and balanced excellence. Or no wait, so
That's the same
that's
thing.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Where does it doesn't say normally virtue here has the more archaic sense.
Because duh
Uh-huh.
is typically used in fact, this very same translator goes more in depth on the meaning of the word, especially as it relates to duh in the Taoist sense, which I would guess is the more modern sense of the word, and has more to do with like a charismatic power, which is not all.
Oh,
that
that's
different.
this virtue that we're always reading
Yeah.
about. Okay, I'm following now.
It's a power that brings about
Change.
Yeah.
I see. This just means general excellence. this.
In fact, the word is used in the title of the Daoist work, the Tao Te Ching, Tao Te Ching, which means it's the classic of the power of the way.
Interesting.
The classic being Qing, the power being De, and the way being Tao.
Nice. That makes sense.
Maybe a little bit of a stretch, but do you think he's referring to being, or the power to impart something comes through like a pure lineage?
That's an interesting thought, I'm not sure.
Because that's what I was thinking when, I was asking about what a thoroughbred is. And
I mean,
Well, a thoroughbred horse, I think regardless of the culture, is the best sort of horse. It's
yeah,
like your dad was saying, it's the highest class of horse.
but the way that they're bred, though, is
Yes.
the main point.
Yeah. The main point, though, is actually not that how they're bred in this analect. It's pointing out a thoroughbred horse as being the best horses, and yes, it's because of how they're bred, but the best of.
It's not just that. It's actually a race. It's a not race, but it's a certain. What would you call that?
Species? Or
Species of horse. A thoroughbred is a species that has these very specific demarcations, just like a Clydesdale is a species of horse. It's like this giant, super strong horse. And a thoroughbred is another species that is from a specific area. And so you can breed a Clydesdale in the same way that you breed a thoroughbred. So it's not only in the breeding, it's in the type of horse that it is. So
if anything here, I feel like it's less of saying that it's how the horse, by saying that one does not praise a thoroughbred horse for its physical strength, in a way, what you breed it for is that physical strength, but for its character, and the character is what the horse acquires through its training. So if anything, I feel like the breed and the strength of the horse is less of what Confucius is praising here, and more of the training and discipline it goes under at an early age. And for that, it is excellent.
yeah, the reference to 316, I think, brings out more meaning because it takes it into the realm of discipline and practice for a purpose beyond a display of strength.
Yeah, greater. Oh yeah, that's exactly it. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, it isn't about the physical characteristics.
The 316 really correlates virtue to hitting the mark and not necessarily destroying the target.
Exactly that. Doesn't matter how much strength, just the precision. The strength is like a natural quality, but the precision comes through discipline.
And it's a different type of discipline.
Very true. Yeah.
It's the discipline archery is in its accuracy and practice is the discipline of the inner man, a training, a focus and restraint. And so the examples of wartime versus peacetime practice of it indicates something in the heart of the people, as opposed to juxtaposing conquest with a disciplined life of peace. Different demeanor in the person. And that's what's being referred to by using the example of horse is the place of inner excellence. So connecting that to the doctrine of the mean and hitting the target of true virtue.
I think it's very interesting to see the, just reading the commentary for that archery one, the correlation between, because I'm remembering when you had us read the history at the beginning of the chapter, and it seemed like that when the Zhao took power, that was a time generally indicated as like a good rule. And it says that after the Zhao had defeated the Shang, that the practice of shooting to pierce the target came to an end. And it was more about the accuracy, in other words, the way. But then once the Zhao declined and ritual fell into disuse, the military practice of shooting to pierce the target was revived. And that's the time that Confucius is in now. So it's very interesting that correlates very much to like the ruling of the Zhao, which was seen as an excellent ruling.
Want us to read it next? No?
I wanted to think about this one a little bit longer. But what I'm seeing with the difference outlined there and with the archery imagery from 316 is like that focus on outcomes. So piercing the hide is as the goal of archery is meant, like my dad had said, it's meant to destroy the target, or to be effective. Because the point of, you'd say the point of learning archery and shooting arrows at anything in the first place is so that you kill the target. But when you shift the perspective, you have to distinguish first that learning to hit the center actually has, you'd say maybe that's the same thing, applying enough strength to be able to pierce the hide is no different than also wanting to be precise and accurate enough so that you pierce the hide in the right place, because all of that is unto the end of destroying the target. But obviously there's a difference there. Piercing the hide is not the focus, but being accurate and precise is. And what I think that actually does is shift the focus of the activity as a whole away from the physical in or pursuit or outcome of the archery practice, and it moves it to a place of an inner discipline, because you're not changing per se this is where it gets a little funny, because you're actually not changing the goal of the practice. Even when the shift of perspective is from hide piercing to center piercing, the goal is still the death of the target, or that's still the outcome. But you're not focused on that as the outcome any longer. You have focused less on results, and you focus more on method. You focus more on the manner or heart behind what you do, is what I'm trying to say.
I'll let you
You're
finish.
focusing more on the process of things, not on the result of things. So you see that shift a little bit? Not a whole lot changes in the way that you shoot, but in a much more subtle and deeper way, there is a very substantial change.
And it becomes more profound
Mhm.
from that.
Yeah. You're going to say something?
No, I was just gonna say this reminds me a lot of when we used to work out at the gym together, and we had that conversation on exercise and like
Oh.
why you would do it. Do you remember?
Kind of, yeah.
It was you were expressing like a personal dissatisfaction because you were trying to either find some way you could get exercise in practically, or you couldn't see the use in just getting stronger for the sake of that.
Uh-huh.
And I had explained, at least with my perspective on it, it was never really about gaining strength or getting muscles or anything like that, but it was a good way for me to practice discipline in my own life, and for me to essentially force myself to do things that I didn't feel like doing. And even though the practice of working out and lifting weights is still the same as someone who's doing it for the sake of building muscle, my application of that and my mentality of why I do that is very different. And I think for my own life makes it more profound than if I were just to do that for the sake of building muscle.
An easier way to see this, and I think this is applying to that same example, is to shift the way that you're going about archery to the way you go about everything else in life. Because if it remains in that attitude of shooting to pierce the hide, to kill the target, how does that look when you exercise that same attitude to other things in life? It's again outcome focused. So I've overcome this, I've beat this, I've achieved this. So it is obviously very belligerent almost. It's like, it's warlike, it's aggressive. And so that's the kind of attitude, militant attitude almost. Very, like a very manly attitude of sorts. in a overly forceful, in the lesser sense of the term.
It's conquest versus refinement.
Yeah, that is a good distinction. While on the other, with shooting so as to hit the mark, when you go about other things in life with this attitude, it's a matter of abiding by rightness, doing things not just precisely in the sense that you know what is right and you're able to walk in that, but and this is the neat difference between precision and accuracy, is preciseness is definitely being able to hit the mark. It has more to do with like a single shot, so it's a precise shot, while accuracy has to do with the consistency that you're able to hit that mark precisely. So you see it's the attitude difference that goes two very different paths in what seems to be a pretty much identical way of exercising an activity, because you're still both shooting, it still both results in the death of something, it's still both still hit the target in a way, but one is concerned with something very different than the other, and that plays out, or that manifests in life because it's coming from a different attitude.
I don't think that the practice of archery was ever about bringing death to anything. So I would say that they don't both produce. They don't both kill something, in the sense that one is an inner discipline. If we wanted to look at inner discipline as death to self, then that target, yes, definitely does kill in that way. So that I would say is effective there. It reminds me of the scene from the Book of Eli. It's just too much of a close correlation, because the word Torah means to instruct so as to hit the mark. And in the Book of Eli, that kind of the ruler of that city, he wants to obtain a copy of the scriptures, and he specifically says, so that I can use it to basically subdue and control others. So it's like that's the the conquering and conquest aspect of something that is meant to be a discipline for a good life, and really a pure life, a heavenly life, and so there's two different ways that can be used. Archery is kind of that similar example of, well, this can be used in one way, or it can be used as a means of inner discipline and instruction in the way that you think about what you do. The one who is practicing that art is not looking to bring death to something. They're looking to refine something in themselves. And so the mind of what is being accomplished, like Noah was saying, it's a very different mind in its approach. And so I'm not trying to be super definitive about that, the killing aspect of it, because obviously archery has a long history of use for humanity by way of provision and hunting and those kinds of things too. So, but it's really about the difference in the heart and mind about what is being done. The other thing this is such a funny little example, but you guys have probably seen it. The old Disney Robin Hood.
With thoughts and animals.
Yeah. And so when they do the archery test, and he's dressed like a crow, and he's a he's not like, there's such a lighthearted, skill there. There's a balance in his inner man, where the sheriff of Nottingham is, he's gonna destroy something, right? His arrow penetrates the target, but and I think Noah referred to this too, the consistency there. What Robin Hood was able to do was split the arrow. So that's a perfect consistency in the shot that takes place through the discipline. And those are the things that are highlighted in a lot of these archery contests too. And, it's about alignment in your inner man. There's a physiological aspect to, or there's an interdisciplinary aspect to the physiological capability. Mm-hmm. And so, like, another example was that guy that did the pistol shooting in the Olympics. You guys remember that?
Yeah, the guy who just went up.
Had jeans on and didn't wear anything,
One hand in his pocket. Yeah.
And everybody else has like triple microscopes on and laser pointers and special guns. There was something different about that the way that the person was functioning in that. And I think that's in 1433, the reference to balanced excellence. Mm-hmm. And then to correlate that from that aspect to the understanding of what virtue really is. It's something, it ties it back to more of the Wu Wei principle of there's an aspect of effortlessness there. But the oxymoron is that the effortlessness doesn't come without discipline. But it comes to the place of effortless expression in its maturity, and then ultimately the outworking of how that operates in a person.
I think is actually ultimately cool about this is that I think it correlates to really Confucius's whole life that he lived, where he had the opportunity to, I guess, in a way, shoot to pierce the hide, to dominate with the life that he practiced. Because there were many kings that he thought ill fit for his instruction, that he could have easily had accepted their offer, become an administrator for that king, and essentially had a way to put his way into a practice for a people. But rather than going for that domineering approach, he essentially chose for discipline.
But that would
He
have
chose to wait. But that's what I'm saying, is by essentially never getting the opportunity to put his way into practice, by waiting for this perfect king that never did arise. I think that probably many people think that as a demerit to Confucius, but I think that proves that he really was committed to this ideology that he preached. Because for him, it was a constant battle in his own soul, it feels like, that he was never able to do that. But ultimately, he still stuck with his principle, that it wasn't about the results. Even though that was something that brought him great turmoil, he never strayed from that. He never sacrificed his own discipline and compromised for the sake of results.
Stubborn old man.
But I think that stubbornness actually shows the authenticity of his character. So much wisdom in that little section.
I'm thinking about the picture of the horse. I'm just thinking about somebody who's like so physically able to maybe play basketball, like you get somebody who's like has all the characters, like characteristics, like being super tall and all of that, and then if there's no discipline, if there's no training, like he's useless, playing basketball. So it's kind of thinking of that importance of discipline and the character and everything. That
I think what you're describing goes along with some points that have been made about like native substance versus cultural refinement, and how both are kind of useless without the other. A super well-trained basketball player that's like 3 foot tall, that's gonna kind of suck.
Yeah.
But simultaneously, like exactly what you were saying, a very tall and well-bodied person, but with no cultural refinement or discipline, isn't going to know how to play basketball.
Wonder how that applies to volleyball.
thinking about that. It's volleyball in my
No, it's like there's something about the way that you think. If you get sports, certain games, especially team sports, are really good illustrations for certain things in life. And having played team sports, when you're young and you play team sports, it is very difficult for an immature person to view what they're doing outside of their own ability to accomplish something.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you watched football, European football, soccer in America, but if you watch, the European teams play, what's the difference between what you see them do and what happens when you go to a soccer game of 5th graders?
Not everybody.
What looks different?
The teamwork is very perfected. The ability to manage the movements and stuff through the team.
Well, the ball is being moved all over the place. And
Yeah. What do you see?
fifth grader, it's just like one kid and just going forward.
It's like
Order.
with kids. We used to call it a herd ball because every player on the field runs after the ball everywhere it goes. So it's like the Tasmanian Devil, dust ball everywhere. You can't even. The difference is you can see the ball with European soccer. You can see where it goes. It goes from one member to another because they work together as a team. But when you're young, it's all, I need to get the ball to accomplish this. So it's just, and sometimes the ball pops out somewhere, so that's the way it looks in soccer. And yeah, sometimes you have the solo guy that runs out in front of everybody and that's how somebody scores. It's the same thing in, basketball or volleyball, where you like, I can get every ball. And so one person may make contact with that ball every time, but it actually never goes over the net. So there's never the point is that person may be extremely agile, capable, athletic. They can get to the ball better than anybody else can, but the team achieves nothing. And so the game itself and the purpose of the game is not to defeat others. The purpose of the game is to work together and to like experience in volleyball the volley. So how many times is a team able to work together to get it over the net and vice versa? And one of the greatest tensions, the joyful tensions of that game is when there's been 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 volleys and no one has scored yet because both teams are working together in such a way. Well, you don't learn to get to that place in the game where you can enjoy it like that without learning other skills. And those skills are not just simply playing together. Those skills are things that you do to discipline the way that you think about how the game works, about how the team is operating together. And so, but young people can't do that. They want to have the fun. They want to enjoy the game, but they want to control it on their own because they may think that they're self-disciplined because they're capable. And capability is not equal to discipline. Discipline is more about restraint and proper opportunity than it is about capability. And so, that's why if you ever play in a team and you're like, if you play in a volleyball team, you may have a 2-hour practice. And for an hour and 45 minutes, you may do 4 or 5 things. Exercise, stretch, and do certain single movements with the ball. Or single movements that involve 2 different people. Like a bump and a set, and a bump and a set, and a bump and a set. And everybody's thinking, we just wanted to play. I just want to play. And I know that because I used to do that. We want to scrimmage. Just let us play the game. That's scrimmaging. And so then finally, the last 15 minutes of practice, coach says, okay, let's scrimmage. Everybody, they want to play. And then everybody goes right back into hero mode and basically doesn't apply anything that they learned by way of skill and discipline. But that's why a good coach does it every time. I'm going to do drills and skill set management so that you can ultimately be a better team player, and then you can accomplish something. And that's the way that good teams in young sports, and even in any sport, because this goes to the professional level because what sports have become, are played by teams, not by individuals. So in basketball, we had my coach tried to set a rule and he had a really hard time making it work in a game because even the coach sometimes, if they're not a really good coach, they just want to win. And if they've got a couple of excellent players, they're going to just let them do whatever they want so that they can win the game instead of learning how to play as a team. But in scrimmage, we would say that you need to pass the ball 5 times before any person on the team takes a shot. And so no matter what the opportunity is, and what that does is it breaks the defense. Because there's hardly any defensive stance in that the other team can take that can withhold that many changes of hands. It's going to open something up. So in a game, it may not always come to 5 passes, but by then the defense is completely disoriented, and so then each player is understanding how the flow works and how those strategic openings come so that you can score. And that's the way you really enjoy a game. And that's how you become, so then the game itself becomes more enjoyable. So archery is one of those things that is very individual, but the same principle applies. You may have a really strong arm, but you may not have a focused eye. Or you may have a lot of strength in your arm, but your posture is not correct. Or golf is a very similar game. to archery. So people think it's all about whacking the ball. I remember the first time I went to, to a driving range, and we were out there with another friend, and we were swinging at those balls like baseballs, just and like probably out of 10 swings, 7 of them didn't even touch the ball. We're just cutting wind, literally, not even hitting the ball. And then if you did hit the ball, just like bang off to the left, bang off to the right, whatever. And this guy came out that worked at the place, and he was like, "Man, you really don't have to. You don't have to swing hard. Yeah, you don't muscle it." And he's like, "You don't hold the club hard, tight. You don't do any of that stuff. There's a posture, and you work with you train your body to let the physics of the club do everything." And so he said, "Look, I'm gonna show you. I'll just basically just let the club fall." And he just like the straight shot that went out, 50, 60 yards, and not with a big club or anything. And so that's the nature of when we think about that, and we think about principles in life that we carry, knowledge that we have, and we're forceful about it. We're going to conquer someone else with what we know, with our ability in our mind, with our ability with our mouth, with our ability, whatever it is. And we don't have an inner place of discipline and humility and meekness. That, you might be really strong. Strong personalities, you have strength of knowledge, strength of, an ability to speak, or you're a good speaker, or you can explain things well, or whatever else, but you've lost all the gentleness of self-discipline and self-control to be able to rightly apply that word of truth, or whatever that ministration of life is in a given situation. So don't think of these things purely as physiological activities, or the practice of virtue in your life is, I think, best described as that balanced excellence. But there's an alignment inside that happens. So using Confucius as an example, he knew when to speak, what to say, and how to say it, and because he was always aligning himself with that. And that is a shadow of what it is to be governed, the discipline of the governance of the Spirit in our life. That is where the true balance and proper application, tone, attitude, moment comes, is through being properly disciplined to and instructed by the Spirit of God, so that everything that we say, everything that we do is seasoned with an eternal grace, something that's outside of ourselves, but we have submitted ourselves to. So submission is always the key to, the true key to strength and perfection in terms of target is submission to the one who is perfect. And that's why the inner character, the true nature of virtue, is such an important thing. You don't just claim virtue. Virtue becomes you. It's not something you do. It's something you yield to. Yielding is a godly principle that is very misunderstood and overlooked, and very even less practiced. But it opens the gates of heaven. Submission, yieldedness, always. There's a power there that is indefensible, cannot be overcome. cannot be quelled. That it's not an easy quality to learn to have rise up and have place of functioning authority within you. $11.07. Esther, will you close us in prayer?
Yes. Father, it's such a blessing to be able to come together and to just submit to you. I pray that our hearts would be open for your teaching and to learn new ways. I thank you for your love for us and for your patience with us. I thank you for each life that is here today, that is desiring to know your way deeper and to understand how to walk on your path. I pray that you would bless each one and that you would speak through those who are teaching throughout the rest of the day, and that you would remain on our hearts. I pray these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.